back. Another edition of Kevin's Corner coming at you on this Wednesday, June 5th morning. The final week of OTAs for the Colts wrapping up as we speak to you. And just 1 week, Joey, left in the offseason program, man. It is crazy how the past 2 months have flown by, but a mandatory 3-day minicamp next Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. So many people always ask me, minicamp, what's different about that? Literally nothing outside of the fact that it's mandatory. Mm-hmm. And the Colts have had pretty close to 100%, if not 100%, attendance during OTA. So not a lot of change next week, but that'll wrap up the offseason program. And then it's summer vacation for the Colts for a month and a half.
Yep, and then we'll be up at Grand Park for another full 2.5 weeks of coverage.
Yeah, we should get official dates on that, Joey, here pretty soon. Ballpark is July 25th. Potentially that's move-in day. Maybe that's the first practice day. So stay tuned to 1070thefan.com and KBowen1070 on Twitter, and we'll have the latest updates on that. But as Joey said, we will have coverage from Grand Park, lots of it. And, yeah, man.
Cool. Today, we're going to do a little OTA recap, right, from this past week. You were out there yesterday. Then actually, we got a pretty big get for this week's show. Our first guest.
Yeah, we do. Thanks for mentioning that. Our first guest. It's taken what? I believe this is episode 140.
Yep.
And we have our first over-the-phone guest. Now that I think about it, Joey, I don't really think we've had a guest in studio. I guess my wife did fill in for you one time, but that's really about it. So we have Nathan Burton, who is Rock Yassine's position coach from Temple. He will join us here probably about the midway point of the podcast, and he will talk about just Rock moving from Presbyterian to Temple, the type of player, the type of character guy that they quickly witnessed at Temple as they gave him a single-digit jersey up there. And honestly, Joey, coming away from the interview, I learned a couple things that I really didn't know about Rock going into it. So it's something that we'll try to do. We don't have anything planned the next couple of podcasts with interviews, but it's something that we're trying to do, maybe nail down a couple more later in June and into July as we get to a little bit more of a quiet time during the offseason. But, yeah, I'm really interested to hear your guys' thoughts on Nathan Burton.
Well, here we go again. OTAs, you were out there yesterday, like I said, and once again, no Andrew Luck.
Yeah, still no number 12 on the field. This minor calf strain, I guess, is now 3 weeks long. And this time of year, I think anything minor is treated major. And I go back to how the Colts, handled, or, honestly, how Andrew Luck admittedly mishandled himself after surgery in January of 2017. He plays the 2016 season, realizes, all right, I need some surgery on the shoulder. It's just not getting better. And Luck pushed himself to try and get back for week one, skip some steps in that rehab process, and that had him on the shelf for the entire 2017 season. So, obviously, a right shoulder labrum injury is far more worrisome than a calf strain. But I think Luck and the Colts have had their perspective, especially Luck, totally change on just how you go about injuries. And it's June 5th as we tape this. He doesn't feel the need to rush it at all. Frank Reich isn't ruling out minicamp just yet for Andrew Luck. Still thinks there's a chance he could participate next week. Part of me kind of says at this point, might as well just keep him on the mend. I mean, what's 2 days of minicamp practice? Because often that Thursday minicamp practice, if they even have it, is mostly for rookies. So, Frank Reich dropped the Joel Embiid line several times. Just got to trust the process. Trust the process with this injury. Again, I think it's unfortunate that he's not out there. Now, last year the guy threw tennis balls and Nerf balls and vortexes this time of year, and he, had a Pro Bowl caliber season. So I don't think it's the end of the world there, but I go back to what I've said on the past couple of podcasts when we've addressed this issue. It is 3 straight years he hasn't participated in OTAs, and more so, it's less on him individually and more on Devin Funchess and Paris Campbell. I think especially, bless you.
Thank you.
I think especially Funchess. where we saw the spat with him and Brissett last week. Yesterday, Joey, Devin Funchess maybe targeted twice, maybe 3 times. A very quiet day for him without Hilton. Hilton wasn't practicing, and no Paris Campbell either.
Any meltdown?
No. Wasn't any whining or diviness or anything like that. I actually thought Jacoby Brissett threw the football much better yesterday. He did have a pick late in practice to Nate Hairston, but I just think watching Funchess and Luck operate, considering Funchess's background, watching those two on the field together at Grand Park is going to be a huge storyline, because I thought that was probably the biggest offensive storyline here coming into the spring offseason program. What can you get done from a guy that had the most drops in the NFL by some analytics sites with his starting quarterback? And now we're not going to see Andrew Luck. We didn't see Andrew Luck in any OTAs. He's out this week, and we'll see if we see him next week at minicamp.
People love talking about wide receiver depth on this podcast and asking you about it. And apparently Chester Rogers had a pretty big day yesterday. What's that looking like?
I think that's accurate, Joey. I think that's very accurate. Chester yesterday, I thought, made catches out of his radius. Not a big guy. I mean, what is he? Is he listed at 5'11"?
Yeah, maybe that.
Yeah, and that might be generous. But again, I thought he made catches out of his radius. He yesterday made a great diving grab on the sideline, had a fingertip catch on a deep ball, made several grabs well down the field. Eric Ebron was watching practice as he recovers from his offseason surgery, and he was loving it, just high-fiving Rodgers. And Frank Reich said after practice that Chester Rogers has had a really, really strong spring, and my first thought was, stop me if you've heard that before. I feel like Chester Rogers gets crowned kind of the darling of the offseason program or training camp. And then during the regular season, you see some production, but I would say inconsistency has kind of defined himself as a receiver in his NFL career. And I mean, hell, he wasn't an undrafted free agent. He was undrafted for a reason.
Right.
So I think we have to keep that in mind when looking at Chester Rogers. But I was impressed by him yesterday. I really think, Joey, he has a pretty... Oh, boy. I got to be careful how I word this. I think he should feel good about a spot on the 53-man roster right now. I do.
Okay.
Frank Reich really likes what he's done this spring, and the Colts gave Chester Rogers a second-round restricted free agent tender back in the offseason. And not to bore you with how in-depth you can go on restricted and exclusive rights, free agents, and all the tenders that go out there. And to put it short, that means they like him a lot. Like, a second-round tender is no joke, and he did catch the second most balls of any Colt on the team last year in 2018. So, Frank Reich went a little bit more in-depth on what it takes to round out that wideout group, and he did mention 4th and 5th wideout spots. It's going to be a luxury, I think, if you stretch it to 6, making this 53-man roster. Rodgers brings a special teams trait, and that's part of it that you have to round out this wideout group. Frank Reich said it yesterday. It's going to take consistency, it's going to take who's healthy, and it's going to take who can contribute on special teams. So yesterday, Joey, the starters out there, again, no Hilton. I assume just, rest day for him after how full throttle he's been early on in OTAs. No Paris Campbell either. Was a physical injury for him. Frank Reich didn't offer a body part. Paris was out there watching practice. So you had some interesting looks at the receiver position. It went Devin Funchess, Chester Rogers, Zach Pascal, who also had a pretty good day, as your starters in the 3 wide receiver set. And then when you went to the 4th guy and the 5th guy on the depth chart, it wasn't Reese Fountain. It was Steve Ishmael and Marcus Johnson first. So I think I was already planning on asking Frank a Reese Fountain question, but then I definitely wanted to after seeing that. And to be fair, Fountain had an up and down day. I would say down early on, dropped the juggling ball near the sideline, but then probably had more ups later in practice. I'm not sure if I mentioned it on last week's podcast, but I think he physically looks more developed this year.
Yeah, you did.
Especially in the lower body. The guy just just has a little bit more definition. Like, what is he, 6'2", 210, something like that? That's a great frame to begin with.
Right.
But he looks a little bit more like, okay, NFL weight program has been instituted into your body. Frank had, I thought, a lot of high praise, honestly, for Reese Fountain after practice. Said that several times this year, when they've shown cut-ups of big plays for the offense, it's been Reese Fountain making those big plays in film sessions. Now, he also threw the caveat in there. He's got to contribute on special teams. And I think that is what gives the Pascals and the Rodgers the upper hand right now. Because if you're only going to keep 5, we know 4. It's Hilton, it's Funchess, it's Campbell, and it's probably Deion Kane. So that means, does that leave one spot?
Yeah.
For Chester Rogers, Zach Pascal, Reese Fountain, who right now look to be behind Marcus Johnson and Steve Ishmael. It's a great problem to have.
Steve Ishmael, man, sticking around.
Steve, do we still have that guy that tweets us about Ishmael?
Once training camp starts, we probably will.
Just the flooding gates of Steve Ishmael tweets to Kevin's Corner will come. But I thought Frank was pretty honest yesterday, Joey, in saying, like, look, we actually have some depth now at wideout. Like, this time last year, remember, it was Ryan Grant's your number 2 wideout, and there was no serious...
Eric Ebron, I guess.
Right. It was no serious threat at the receiver position. You were hoping that the 2 tight end set, played a lot for you. So I think they just feel better about their quality depth there. And I do think it's going to be a really, really competitive group. And there's so many different angles now. You feel like you obviously know what you have in Hilton. But then it's like, all right, what does Funchess show you with Luck? What exactly is the role for Paris Campbell? How healthy is Deion Kane? Is Reese Fountain going to be a cut, or is he going to make the team? What about Chester Rogers and Zach Pascal, 2 guys who in playoff games last year were playing 80% of your snaps?
Mm-hmm.
So just so many questions, and that doesn't even include, Marcus Johnson, a Steve Ishmael, hell, a Krishan Hogan, a local guy who I thought when he was healthy last year at training camp, he looked like a guy that could make your 53-man roster. So I am very, very intrigued by what this group will look like at Grand Park.
Pretty interesting yesterday, too. Banogu with a position change? What's going on?
Yeah. We've hinted at this on the podcast the past few weeks that, okay, Ben Banogu continues to run with the defensive end group. And I always thought when they drafted him and when they started talking Sam linebacker, at first I was confused, Joey, but then I was also very curious. Like, okay, what does that look like? That we didn't see that position used in the way you're talking about it being used here in 2019. You didn't have a player like Banogu on your team last year that you were willing to make this hybrid DN linebacker role. And think about it, Joey. The guy plays DN his entire collegiate career. When he was at, where'd he go first? Was it Louisiana Monroe? One of those direction. Well, I guess Monroe's not a direction. It's more of a president and a river, and I guess a county in the state of Indiana. I think he went to Louisiana Monroe before TCU. They thought about moving him to the interior of the defensive line. I mean, that is like a far, far cry from now, what you're seeing him being asked to do.
Louisiana Monroe, 2015. You got it.
What are their nicknames? What's their nickname?
They are the Louisiana Monroe Warhawks.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah.
I kind of like that.
Yeah.
I know Louisiana Lafayette, that's the Ragin' Cajun, I believe.
Uh-huh. Louisiana Tech, cool colors.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I like their.
Like the sky blue, purple, reddish.
Yep.
Yeah. I'm a big fan. They always had a good women's basketball team, I felt like, when I was younger. Old male coach, I forget his name. I think Carl Malone went there.
So did Jerry,
Jerry Rice went to some Mississippi Valley State or something.
Right.
Yeah. Dude,
Terry Bradshaw went there.
Did he?
Thanks.
I was listening to your podcast the other day. You know your colleges with players.
I'm the god of it, dude.
Dude, I thought I knew it, but you were like damn. We might have to throw hopefully some random Twitter questions will get thrown in there.
That's what I was going to say. If anybody has any college players they want to test me on, feel free.
I know our boy James thankfully just lost on Jeopardy. I was so freaking happy, but hey, we can try and stump Joey. All right, Banogu, Joey. The last couple weeks, again, it's been more defensive end. And I thought if you're going to create this new position for him, he was a DN throughout his TCU time. He did a little bit of Sam linebacker at the Senior Bowl. He was a Sam linebacker at rookie minicamp. You want to give him all the Sam linebacker reps you can because that's unnatural for him. The naturalness is the defensive end spot. And so finally, I've seen it now 3 straight weeks. I just asked Reich yesterday. I'm like, what's up? Can you give us an update on it? Because again, we only see one OTA session a week. That's something where is he doing Sam stuff the other days when we're not out there? Like, what exactly is going on? And Reich's like, no, he's just flashing at defensive end. And for now, I think they're going to try and groom him there. Now, maybe that changes. I did notice a play yesterday where he was a D end and then he dropped into coverage. So maybe you are a little bit more creative. Now, I have several questions, though, Joey. Is this permanent? What does this mean for Kamoko Turi? And is Ben Banogu a guy that we need to start talking about as maybe the future defensive end for this football team? Because when he was drafted, I had, one of my few questions about this 2019 draft was you didn't take a true defensive end. Well, now are you looking at Banogu as a guy that you feel like could be that, or do you still want to experiment in that hybrid linebacker role? So this will be something that we need to watch play out over the rest of the offseason. Certainly, it's not good for Kamoko Turi.
Mm-hmm.
If he's staying there for long stretches, Al-Qadim Muhammad's already ahead of Kamoko Turi on the depth chart.
He's got to work on those pass rush moves, man.
He's got to find a consistent move.
More IG videos. Let's go.
More IG. He also does highlight videos from practice.
Love it.
Do you like those people that do that?
I mean, yeah. How can you not?
It was good. I think he had a couple last night. And, Joey, remember when this happened, we were kind of scratching our heads. Like when they're like, Banogu to Sam, we're kind of like, really? How do you get all those linebackers on the field? Banogu, Walker, and Leonard all in the field? That's archaic almost in like today's NFL. Right. And then you draft Bobby Okereke in the 3rd round. So that even was, making my head scratch even a little bit more. I will say yesterday was the first time, kind of late in the 11-on-11 period, Banogu and Okereke on the field together in pass rush downs. So that will be something to watch.
Well, KB, a little bit of troubling reports have come out on Wednesday morning regarding Bobby Okereke and a rape allegation that came from 2016 at his time at Stanford. Yeah, we don't have a ton of confirmed details on it yet, Joey, but, with us just mentioning Okereke, and this is a very developing story, and I think by the time you've listened to this podcast, we might have more information or at least some words from Chris Ballard and the Colts on it. Basically, it's coming out. The New York Times wrote an article back in 2016 that accused a Stanford football player of sexual assault, and now it has been revealed that it was, or at least the accused person is Bobby Okereke and was accused of rape. And from the brief little bit of research that I've done so far, and again, this is very last-minute stuff I've been looking up this morning before we tape this podcast, it sounds like a student panel acquitted might not be the right word, but I guess absolved him from any wrongdoing, and he was still allowed to be on the football team, still allowed to play football. So, certainly I think this is, unfortunately, it's not a uncommon story on college campuses, of trying to sift through everything and what the level of evidence is there for rape versus sexual assault and the whole consensual aspect of things and all of that. So, again, don't have a ton of details on this.
Clearly, it sounds like the Colts knew about it when they drafted Bobby Okereke, who had a very decorated resume off the field.
Was that before or after he interned with Condoleezza Rice?
Ooh, that's a good question. I don't know. I would say before. I mean, 2015, 2016. I mean, that was very young or somewhat young in his collegiate career at Stanford. So, yeah, I mean, I think this is all before. So he even did things at Stanford that, you would think there would be some background checks for those sorts of things. So, again, hopefully we'll have some more information on my Twitter account, KBowen1070, and even an article form, 1070thefan.com.
Well, it's a better news for the Colts. Rigoberto Sanchez with a new deal.
Yeah, new deal for Rigo, Joey. This was a guy that we had mentioned as a possible extension sort of player here this offseason. It to me, it's kind of a no-brainer in the sense of he's 24 years old. He played at a Pro Bowl level last year. It was actually, felt like I should have gotten some compensation from Rigo's agent for just standing on a bit of a ledge saying, this is a guy, look at the numbers.
You pumped him, yeah.
Yeah, he should be in the conversation for Pro Bowl. He led the AFC in net punting average, third in the NFL. I think he was fourth or fifth in kickoffs for touchbacks. He also was a huge reason why the Colts were the number one punt coverage unit in the NFL last year. I think they allowed like 4.4 yards per punt return, a very, very impressive number. So 4-year deal. I think earlier today, Field Yates had the money, $11.6 million total. So I guess he's now under contract for 5 total seasons for $12.245 million. So yeah, that would extend him through at least the 2023 season, which is longer than any other Colt on the roster is under contract. Nobody is under contract for that long. And he's also a guy that is probably got the biggest extension Chris Ballard's handed out. Pierre Desir got 3 years. Jack Doyle got 3 years. Mark Glowinski 3 years. I think those are the only ones, in-house guys that you have re-signed. And, I even think back to last year, Joey, games that he helped you win, like Miami. Remember how close that Miami game was? 3-point game. Some huge just coffin corner punts, directional punting late in that game. The Giants game, week 16, only won that game by 1 point. He was critical in that. And I remember going into post-game locker rooms after those wins, and you had guys, players on their own mentioning Rigoberto as a huge reason why they won that game. And I do think it's pretty impressive, Joey, when you consider how big those shoes were he had to fill.
I mean, like, to say that. Yep.
Pat McAfee, to begin with, was one of the best punters in the NFL, if not the best. But then just also the whole personality and the whole presence that Pat McAfee had. And here comes an undrafted kid out of Hawaii. Credit Tom McMahon, the old special teams coordinator, for finding Rigoberto. And he was in competition. He beat out Jeff Mother Bleepin' Locke, the first free agent signing Chris Ballard ever had. Jeff Locke.
Not setting the bar too high there.
No. Chris. And here comes Rigo into the building and beats out Jeff Locke, and then, has had 2 really, really good NFL seasons. So 24 years old, extremely young. Give him that big extension, and we'll see if anyone's left this offseason. Is it a Costanzo? Is it an Ebron? Is it a Kenny Moore? Or is Chris Ballard probably done for this offseason? So that'll be something to watch.
Can he do that once minicamp is over, before training camp, or does it have to be while they're together?
No, he can do that at any time. I mean, the Colts always like to make things official with how the Josh McDaniels situation went down, so they don't announce signings until it's actually pen to paper, but you can, agree to terms anywhere. I want to say it was Ndamukong Suh was overseas when he agreed to terms with the Bucks, or somebody like that. I know, like Thad Young for the Pacers, he's taking a trip overseas around July 1st. So it is something you can definitely agree to terms, but the officialness of putting pen to paper, that will have to wait. So I know Costanzo and Hilton, when they signed their first extensions, I think both happened back in 2015. That was late into training camp, maybe even late into the preseason. So we'll see on that front.
A little bit of interesting news, I thought, seeing that they brought in Jonathan Cyprien for a visit.
Yeah, I mean, definitely a name that we know full well here in the AFC South. He's kind of been on a bit of a tour. Drafted by the Jags, second rounder, out of Florida International, same college as T.Y. Hilton. Their careers overlap there. Played in Jacksonville from 2013 to 2016. Signed a 4-year deal with Tennessee in 2017. And then he tears his ACL last August. And the Titans cut him back in March. So I wasn't stunned at all to see his name appear for the Colts because it's almost like you're doing more of a medical check. You know, it's like, all right, you tore your ACL in August. We signed Mike Mitchell and J.J. Wilcox last season, in the season. We'd like to get ahead of things a little bit earlier. Where are you at physically? Because I do think Chris Ballard, a lot of it's just going to come down to pure physical health for Jonathan Cyprien. And then I saw he also visited the Eagles on Tuesday. I mean, Chris Ballard, there might not be a position he likes more in terms of his depth than safety. He's obsessed with Matthias Farley. At times, I think George Odom could be one of his sons with how often he talks about Odom on his own. And then he traded up 20 spots to take Kari Willis. Yeah. So those are your three depth guys. And then you have, obviously, Malik Hooker, who's participated and has been healthy the entire spring. Frank Reich was gushing about just how easily Malik Hooker's moving this year in the spring. And then you have Clayton Geathers, who you expect to be healthy come camp. So 5 safeties is probably enough. So I don't think it'd even be a guarantee Cyprien would make this roster if he came in here. He'd have to prove, again, that he's healthy, and he'd have to be content with being a backup. He's only been a starter in the NFL. But I get why the Colts are doing this. You have that injury cloud with Hooker and with Geathers, obviously, and I guess a little bit of Farley, to where you're kind of like, all right, you need plan B, C, D, and E. So doesn't that sound like anything imminent on the Jonathan Cyprien front, but that's where we are.
Cool, man. Should we get to the first guest?
Yes, let's do that again to touch back on what we said in the opening segment. This is Nathan Burton. Currently, he's Georgia Tech's co-defensive coordinator because Jeff Collins, the head coach at Temple, took a large bulk of his staff down to Georgia Tech. But he coached Rock Ya-Sin, Nathan Burton did, for 1 year as his position coach at Temple. And I hope you guys find this pretty interesting. About 140 episodes into Kevin's Corner, it's time to have our first guest over the phone. He is Nathan Burton, the position coach for Rock Ya-Sin at Temple, and currently the co-defensive coordinator and safeties coach at Georgia Tech. Coach, we know it's a busy season for you. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me. Love to talk about Rock anytime I can.
Take me back, I guess, about a year and a half ago when you hear about Rock leaving Presbyterian and you guys are at Temple and how that recruitment started and just what were your early impressions and talking to people that maybe knew him and watching him on film.
Well, Coach Thacker and Coach Collins got a call from one of the coaches at Presbyterian saying that they were dropping their scholarship program for football. You know, they still have football, but not on scholarships. And they just recommended Rock and saying, hey, we got a real dude here. You guys need to check him out. And they started doing some studying on him and finding his film and looking what he did in that conference and said, hey, this is a guy that we need to bring up. And then when he got to Temple's campus is really where he took over. His demeanor in the locker room, how he attacked everything he did, whether it was competition stuff that we did in the playbook, just trying to learn. You could tell he was going to be different that first day he got there.
So this is spring practice, weight room stuff. You knew early on, well before the fall camp, that he was going to be maybe a starter for you and an all-conference type player?
Well, I'll tell you what. We have a winter workout session that goes on, and it's a mat drill, and it's tough. I mean, it's a mother, and they have They get there at 5:07 to check in, and they have an hour and a half kind of workout deal. And the way he killed that, you could every day you're like, okay, is this going to be the day he taps out? Is this going to be the day? And then you could start seeing him elevate people's level of play around him. We're like, okay, we just hope this translates onto the football field when we get to spring. You could just tell he was going to be a dude mentality-wise without touching the field. When we got to the field in spring ball, the first 2 days were without pads, but you can tell he's a little bit different. He's a unique competitor. It's competition from the time he walked out those doors. And when we added on the pads, it just got better. He was physical and he was tough, and he's exactly what you want a corner to be. So we were elated at that point.
Nathan Burton joined us here on Kevin's Corner, the position coach for Rock Ya-Sin at Temple. Walk me through the whole Temple tough thing. I think some of our listeners know it, the single-digit numbers that are assigned to your 10 toughest, 9 toughest guys. And I believe Rock was the first-year player to earn a single-digit number at Temple. Right.
So what's the crazy story is usually when you get a single digit, it's your accumulated work that has done that. The one other player I think that might have been awarded one early was Sean Chandler. That's also playing in the league. He got one award his freshman year, but you have to go through a process in order to earn that. You got to earn the respect from your coaches, from your teammates. When we put a single digit out there, it means that you're tough. And he went through that, being the guy that had only one semester or 2 semesters left, but going through that first period, he earned that during that off-season time, during that non-football time when everybody's just it's not fall. It's not football camp's not here. It's going through that spring. And the way he handled himself, there was no one on the team that said he did not deserve that number that he got, that 6.
On the field, Coach, the stat that really stood out to me, I think the longest completion he allowed all year for you guys was 17 yards. Did you guys use him in shadow roles? I know it was mostly man coverage, but how did you guys utilize Rock last year?
Yeah, we try to typically match him up on the best receiver of the opponent as best we could. With teams going fast, sometimes he had to stick to a side. But early in the year, teams in our conference were attacking him. But I think the one game he ended up with like 3 picks, and he had another one that was a house call that was returned. I was called back due to a block in the back. But every time someone tried to attack him, he attacked them. He ended up with the ball. He had the PBU. And he did it with very little PIs. He plays great with his body, with his hands. His wrestling background, I think, is a unique story. It allows him to have close combat, but also have a presence of mind not to lunge and reach. So we try to just use him as a matchup guy, find their best guy, and take him away.
One of the more fascinating things that I was reading about last night was the devout Muslim background for Rock, and that at times he fasted, last year for you guys. So obviously not eating the same sort of, college meal plan sort of thing, and yet he still is performing week in and week out for you, even without pumping in all these calories, like 99% of your roster.
Right. So Rock is elite in everything he does, even with his faith, and we admired that from what he did. Because a lot of times I think guys, when they start preparing for things like Ramadan, they haven't prepared themselves for it. It just gets to their fasting time, and they stop. They stop their eating. He knew it was coming. He had a process. He made sure that he was at a proper weight, so he went through fasting. He wasn't losing all the type of weight that he should. Now it was tough on him. I mean, he was. You could see him losing weight, but his competition, his effort on the field never wavered. Unbelievable human.
The Colts took Rock 34th overall back in April, the highest they've taken a corner since Marlon Jackson in 2005. Were you surprised about the Colts taking Rock, and what was your interaction with Indianapolis during the draft process?
Just a few phone calls between us and the staff, really just getting our opinion on him and where we all thought that he might end up being a first rounder. So I think the Colts are actually lucky, if you can say that, to grab him in the second round. But we thought he was a first round talent, just being an elite person, an elite football player. And when he slipped to the second round, I know that he may be disappointed, but I think that's awesome, to go in the second round, but he'll still play with a chip on his shoulder this year because that's just the type of person he is. He wants to be the best, and he'll carry that with him this year.
The Colts staff has mentioned, maybe a little bit more development in zone coverage will be a challenge for Rock to become a full-time starter. For him to earn that starting job possibly by this fall, where do you think he needs to develop here in the next couple months?
Yeah, definitely in the zone concept. You got to remember, Rock, he didn't really start playing football until his junior year in high school. And being down here in the South, that's the anomaly, right? Kids usually start playing when they're 5 or 6. And zone concepts usually go in early in the process. Usually in high school, you're playing your cover 3 and your cover 2. Rock's high school played man. He played man at Presbyterian, and he played man for us. And I think that's a harder technique to develop. Him also being a wrestler and not being necessarily a basketball guy, some spatial awareness stuff that you gotta overcome. I just think he's gonna attack it. He's gonna study what he needs to study. He'll get him the film room. He'll have extra playbook time. He'll get with the older guys, and he'll learn what the zone concepts is. Football's football. He's going to be able to study and retain and play fast, whatever it is. Coaches, it'll be guys like me that just need to see him do it before we believe it. You know what I mean? But he'll be able to handle everything that they throw at him.
Nathan Burton joined us here on Kevin's Corner, currently the co-defensive coordinator and safeties coach at Georgia Tech, and was the position coach for Rock Ya-Sin at Temple in 2018. You've brought up the wrestling background now on a couple of times, and it's such a fascinating story. You don't usually see that on a cornerback's bio, but a 2-time wrestling state champion in Georgia. In what ways do you see that maybe in his preparation or even in his game on the field?
Well, 2 things. Preparation, in wrestling, they got to cut weight, and they got to be strict on dieting and, studying your opponent because it's more of a man-on-man deal. So I think that will have a lot to do with it. And then when you talk about just what wrestling skills, how they transfer over to corner, it is a one-on-one matchup. You're studying leverage. You're using your hands. You're not letting people off the line. Or, it's a similar concept, lateral movements. But what Rock has developed, I think, more than most is his use of his hand-eye coordination, coupled with his footwork at the line of scrimmage. I've always tried to recruit basketball guys, specifically point guards, that have played the corner position because they know how to move spatially. But Rock has kind of changed my mind now. Every time I go out to high school, I'm like, hey, does this corner wrestle? So I think there's a lot of skill sets that will carry over with Rock and his wrestling background.
Coach, I'll leave you with this. Pierre Desir, veteran corner for the Colts, told a story a couple weeks ago where they're getting ready to have a position meeting, and Rock Ya-Sin is walking into the meeting 10 minutes early, notebook in hand, pen in hand, and Pierre's kind of like, "What are you doing, man? Like, you can come to the cafeteria and grab a snack and hang out with us. The meeting doesn't start for another 10 minutes." Is that kind of the sort of character of Rock, of like, this guy is going to prepare to the fullest to make sure he does reach, NFL stardom?
Oh, yeah. Rock's fully prepared. Just knowing he's going to treat walking in the Colts every day like it's a business. It is a game of football, but he's there to earn a spot, make sure that the Colts organization, the Colts fans are happy with what, the product he produces on the field. But he's going to prepare. He'll be in the meeting room early. He'll stay late, and he wants people to know that about him.
Nathan Burton, the position coach at Temple for Rock Ya-Sin, and now is at Georgia Tech. And I know you guys are busy preparing for a mighty big one in the season opener and recruiting. So we really appreciate you taking time out of your day to join us.
Yes, sir. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Coach.
All the best to you. Thank you.
Well, Joey, what'd you think, man? I mean, that was good insight, great insight from Rock Ya-Sin's position coach.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad 140 in, and we got our first guest. That's awesome.
Took a while.
Coach Burton was about as football coach as you could imagine.
He was.
But, great insight, and happy to talk to him.
Anything in particular stand out? I mean, we've talked a lot about Rock's wrestling background and the character. I went back and watched the Colts with the next pick video, and I remember when Matt Eberflus, Chris Ballard is looking for confirmation on the pick. He looks over to Eberflus, and Eberflus is like, he has the DNA that we're looking for. Looks over at Brian Decker, his character guru guy, and he's like, this is one of the guys that I've had underlined. It seems like he checks those boxes, and I think, Nathan Burton said a lot of the same things.
Yeah, I mean, he was from the start. Anytime we get to talk about Rock is a good day. So,
Right,
he's one of the favorites. I thought two things that were interesting to me. One, did not realize that he was of the Muslim faith.
Yeah.
So that he had to fast during the season.
Pretty impressive, man.
That he can keep all that together while being a student.
And think of those training table of meals. I mean, those are insane. And then from a NFL standpoint, when you're having to change your body type, things like that. So that is a storyline I don't think we've heard a whole lot about in the past month of getting to know Rocky Sin.
No, had no idea. And then secondly, when he talked about how he slipped out of the first round, thought he was going to be a first rounder, and that Coach Burton said straight up, I think the Colts got lucky, in a way, to get him at 34. So that just speaks to the steal of moving back, but then moving back and still getting the guy that you wanted.
Right, exactly. And there were a lot of mock drafts. I mean, you and I have talked about it. Pittsburgh, in that mock draft, right around 20 in the first round. I think that was probably as high as I saw Rock going, but I think a lot of people had him as a first-round pick. So thank you again to Nathan Burton. One of the best fight songs in college sports, Georgia Tech's fight song. I referenced the season opener that they have, Clemson, at Clemson.
Wow. Yeah. Tall task.
Yeah. We'll see for the first-year staff of Jeff Collins and company moving over from Temple.
I thought you were going to say Notre Dame.
Well, Notre Dame, certainly. I said one of the best. Not the best, but the Ramblin' Wreck from Georgia Tech with a hell of an engineer.
Man, you played a lot of NCAA football back in the day.
Oh, tons of it. Tons of it. I'd pick Georgia Tech as a team just to hear the fight song constantly.
And that triple option was pretty
good.
Or Calvin Johnson.
Yes. Oh, my gosh. Now I got the itch to go in the basement and bring on my PlayStation 2.
All right, man, let's hop into some Twitter questions.
Let's do it.
How about from Skoog? We haven't heard from Skoog in a little bit.
Been a while for Skoogeth.
Yeah, he says, when Luck gets into game mode, he's a scary, intense dude. Is there any starting QB in the league who could take him in a fight?
Oh, wow. So we're talking like octagon style? Is that what we're thinking here?
I don't really know. He didn't say.
Bar fight? There might be some quarterbacks that can win a bar fight. Dude, I'm trying to think of scary quarterbacks. Are there any?
I feel like Phillip Rivers would just have like crazy old man strength.
Hey, I'll tell you what, Phillip Rivers, if you did like a bracket style NFL quarterbacks fighting, Phillip Rivers and Ryan Fitzpatrick are making it to the quarters.
Yeah.
At least.
Yeah.
Old man, just old guy. Yeah, just know it. Dad strength.
For sure.
They're still going to beat you one-on-one on the basketball court until you're at least a junior in high school. I mean, obviously, Cam and Big Ben are huge, bigger than Luck. I mean, Luck's still huge. I can't think of any.
Yeah, he'd be a tough one for sure.
Carson Wentz, is he a redhead?
Yeah, I don't trust Carson, but Big Ben and Cam match definitely physically. I feel like Luck.
But I think Luck just flips the switch, kill you with kindness right until that buzzer sounds, and then he's just foaming at the mouth.
Yeah,
Andrew Luck,
I'd agree.
Winner, chicken dinner.
All right, this is from @Ryder33414. Teams that will give the Colts the most trouble this year and why?
Well, I think a lot of them have the same reasons why. Kansas City, I guess on their schedule, you can throw the Saints in there, but if you're talking just AFC, right now I think there's 4 teams in the AFC kind of on a tier. I think it's Kansas City, I think it's New England, I think it's Indy, and I think it's LA. Same 4 that were the Final 4 last year. Kansas City and LA have great quarterbacks. Tom Brady, we can debate how much he's got left in the tank, but he still gets it done. And then I think what you worry about mainly with Kansas City, or the Chargers and the Patriots is they do have defensive blueprints, defensive talent, much more so than I think Kansas City. Kansas City just has this explosive offense that they'll just outscore you. Mm-hmm. Now they have some questions, I think, defensively, changing systems, losing Houston, losing Ford. We'll see what Frank Clark can give them. But, yeah, I would say those are the teams in the AFC that would scare me the most.
Jonathan Gummel, you're building a team from scratch. You can have Ballard or Luck, but not both. Who do you choose and why?
Luck. Yeah. Andrew Luck or Chris Ballard to start a team?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a no-brainer. It's really hard to find a quarterback.
Yep.
I mean, Chris Ballard's a great general manager. I think he's really good, but you've given him the ideal blueprint he could ever ask for. That was Andrew Luck sitting here waiting for you when you took the job. That helps you out big time.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, finding a quarterback is so freaking hard.
Well, and I think it just shows that in 2018, sure, they started 1-5, but even with that amazing draft class that Ballard hauled in, if Jacoby Brissett
exactly
or Scott Tolzien or is the quarterback,
Stephen Morris,
they're definitely not 10-6 and heading to the second round.
No way, shape, or form. And I mean, it goes back to how fortunate the Colts have been in '98 and 2012.
Yeah.
You are plays away in Week 17 games from drafting Ryan Leaf and Robert Griffin III, or hell, maybe even Ryan Tannehill. I think they could have fallen to like the third pick back in 2012. So, yeah, it's Andrew Luck 10 out of 10. I don't think there's much of a debate there.
I want to see a 30 for 30 on how that happened with the Colts and maybe even the Packers too. Just kind of you just get these two generational quarterbacks, and every other team, like you said, is just searching.
They fail. I mean, go back to those like Week 17 games, meaningless games. I want to say it's like Colts and Cardinals in '97, and the Cardinals got a 4th and 1 late in the game or something. And then in 2011, you had Maurice Jones-Drew gets like a 4th and 1 for the Jags that keeps the Colts at 2-14 instead of the Colts possibly getting a win and moving to 3-13.
Well, and you think about, too, that Andrew Luck was going to be the number 1 pick if he came out
2011.
after his junior year.
Yeah.
So then if that happens, then you probably are drafting Robert Griffin III the next year.
Well, honestly, you might be drafting Andy Dalton. Andy Dalton was always a rumor in 2011 as a second rounder for the Colts.
Wow.
That was always a rumor. Polian was very close to pulling the trigger there.
Wow.
It's trust me, you just don't mess around with the quarterbacks. You take the quarterback every day. A GM is great. GM ain't suiting it up 16 weeks out of the year and touching the ball 99.9% of your offensive snaps.
It's kind of fate when you think about it.
It really is. Scary. Good scary for your Colts fans.
Bengals fans, not so much. Listen to this after you just dropped that.
Sorry.
Drew Rush, can Joey Molinaro do the Luck laugh from the conversation with Tom Hanks? I pulled it up. So
do you got it?
Yeah, for reference sake here.
So is this Luck's laugh that you're about to play?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know if you have headphones or anything that you want to throw in there just so you can follow along, but this is that video. The Colts dropped it. I'm playing it on TMZ Sports, but Hanks and Luck are talking.
But it's good. Right. Basically, in sports, you get made fun of for everything. It doesn't matter what you build skin that. Like an armadillo, as an old coach used to say.
Will you study like the social media after the game?
No. I stay off of social media.
That is.
I'm just a little too old for social media.
The secret of getting by in this world is to ignore.
So there it is.
Ignore.
That's the laugh.
Is that like a Pillsbury Doughboy deep belly laugh?
I don't know.
Where's that coming from?
KB and listeners of Kevin's Corner, trust me, I've thought about this many of times since this video has dropped. Sometimes it wakes me up in my sleep at night.
I was going to say, I'm sure Riley loves you waking up at 2 a.m. thinking about this.
But I can't figure out if this is his fake conversational office laugh, because he already has a bad laugh. But when he does that,
dude, I think it's real.
The extra emphasis on it, because usually it's just kind of like, but this one's like, it's like even more throaty. And I don't know if he's just nervous because he's talking to Tom Hanks or what it is.
Dude, the social media comment I can't get over.
29
years old. He acts like he's freaking my grandpa.
But you know what? Somebody did tweet at me after I tweeted about that, and they made a pretty good point. They're like, he's right. And you think about it, and it's like, yeah, he kind of just did a big slam on all of us. Social media is for high schoolers.
Social media, okay, if you're Snapchatting what you're having for breakfast every other day, that's social media to a lot of people. Social media to, I think, a lot of people our ages, you look at Twitter as a pretty informative place, and Instagram, more of an entertainment base. Like, I would say the 29-year-olds that I hang out with, 90 to 95% have Twitter or Instagram.
Yeah. But it's probably for the best. And I told you,
probably is.
me and Polizzi talked to Jory Allen, Miss Basketball, and she's a senior going into freshman year of college, and she didn't have any social media. So I think sometimes people who are incredibly gifted at these things say, you know what,
maybe we're doing it wrong.
One less headache.
Maybe you're right.
But it's part of it.
All right, give us an Andrew Luck hearty laugh.
Well, I think the funny part, like you said, was that he. I'm a little too old for social media. So throaty, dude. Jeez.
Skin like an armadillo over there.
That
Joey
one was great
Molinaro.
too, man. Gosh, I was like, you could have chosen anything else, but an armadillo. Okay.
He was a busy man during the Indy 500. Matt Damon talking to him, and Christian Bale.
Yeah,
and
he was.
Tom Hanks.
From Chase, biggest names who will not make the team / surprise cuts. Give me your top 3.
Well, I mean, if I'm making a 53-man roster today, I'm probably cutting Reese Fountain. I'm only keeping 2 quarterbacks. I'm like the Chad Kelly suspended for 2 games. I don't really feel like that's that newsy. But like you are questioning how many corners you're going to cut, how many receivers you're going to cut. What do you do with a guy like Banogu? Like in no way do I really think right now Kamoko Turi would be cut. But if Banogu is your second, if he's a defensive end, Jabal Shear, Justin Houston, Ben Banogu, Al-Qadim Muhammad are your top 4 ends. Mm-hmm. Having a 5th end can be looked at times as a bit of a luxury. Again, I still think Toure will be kept, but that's something I just maybe we should monitor a little bit. I mean, this time last year, we weren't thinking John Simon's getting cut.
Right.
So surprise guys, again, I'll throw Fountain in there. I guess I'd throw maybe Pascal in there, considering how much he played for you last year. LaRaven Clark, I think, could get the snip at corner. Right now, honestly, and we didn't see Rocky Sin for personal reasons on Tuesday. Like Jalen Collins or Nate Hairston are running above Rocky Sin. Again, that's going to change, but I would think Jalen Collins or Nate Hairston get cut. So those are some names that I'll throw out there.
Aaron wants to know, what are the chances the Colts opts to keep 6 wide receivers on the active roster with Chester Rogers getting a nod with his special team contributions?
Well, I think it's a good question. Frank, again, threw out the number of 4 or 5, probably 5, honestly, yesterday. 6 is a luxury, and 6 comes back to 2 points. You aren't keeping a 3rd quarterback on your 53-man roster if you want 6 wideouts. And your 5th and 6th wideout have to be your return guys. And then, again, you got to pick from another area. Does that mean only 9 offensive linemen? Does that mean 8 or 9 defensive linemen when you might want to keep 10 because that's such a deep group? What about corner where you have a lot of depth? We've already talked about safety. You have 5 guys that you feel like will definitely make the team there. So 6, it's a big number to get to at the receiver position. Those guys have got to be core special teamers for you. And we just, full well, Joey, the injury situation. Let's mention Javon Patterson, the rookie from Ole Miss, tore his ACL during OTAs. He'll be on IR for the entire year, 7th rounder for you. Joey, what happens if, Ryan Kelly goes down with a meniscus injury in preseason and you don't want to put him on PUP? Yes, heavily knock on wood. But these are realities that inevitably happen to every single team at some position group in training camp. You have injuries.
Right.
You got to keep an extra body somewhere. So that is another issue of right now your 53-man roster looks like rose petals because no one's hurt. Well, go put on pads for 3 days in a row, play 4 preseason games, and that's going to change your outlook big time.
From Lucas, between chilling with Matt Damon at the 500, the disco ad, having a nice off with Tom Hanks, and giving nerdy facts about all the Colts opponents' cities for 2018, Luck finally seems to be building a brand for himself off the field. Will he ever approach Peyton's iconic status?
No. Peyton just had it, man. And I will say this town needed an infusion, obviously, for their football team, and Luck just the bar has been set so high by Peyton. It's impossible to achieve that. And honestly, Andrew Luck doesn't want to achieve that, you know? Like, Peyton wanted that. He still craves it, still wants it. Like, what's Andrew Luck going to do in his post-football life?
Disappear.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean,
100%.
Have a stake in an EPL team and go over there and just live in Europe? I have no idea, but that seems to be a very plausible situation. We see Andrew Luck on TV, or we see Peyton Manning on TV every freaking week right now.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not a bad thing. Like, trust me, I think it's unbelievably cool that him and Tiger Woods were in the same Pro-Am group last week. Obviously I do, but I just don't think Andrew Luck wants all that, man.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's what I was about to say, is that it's in a lot of ways I feel bad, crazy as it sounds, I feel bad for somebody who makes as much money as Andrew Luck does, but in a lot of ways I feel for him in ways of about the comparisons with Manning that are always going to be there.
Yes,
and
in
the
this
fact,
market.
Yeah, and the fact that they are just completely different guys.
There is a statue in front of Lucas Oil Stadium.
Yeah.
Like, for Andrew Luck to get a statue, he's got to win at least 2 Super Bowls.
Yeah.
And I think even if Andrew Luck, as crazy as it sounds, even if he wins 2 or 3 Super Bowls, there will be fans in this city, in this state, wherever, there are Colts fans, that still will hold Peyton on a higher pedestal. And part of that maybe comes from, look at what we were before he got here. You know, like, whatever.
All the kids named Peyton now.
2 or 3, winning seasons or playoff appearances before he got here. I just don't think Andrew will offer the same off the field sort of. Look, Andrew does a ton off the field, a lot, but I just think Peyton has this personality that fans just absolutely love. And
there's no love like your first.
Gosh, man, you should write a love book, man.
Yeah, I mean, you go back to your first. That's how it is.
That was good. Don't say that like in any sort of wedding letter to Riley or anything, but that was good.
That's why I'm concerned about becoming a parent, because everybody always says, you love them all the same. It's like,
The oldest. Are you the oldest?
I am the oldest.
I was going to say, I felt like you were.
Peyton Manning, you like Andrew Luck a lot.
You do.
But you love Peyton Manning.
You do. That's such a good point, man.
But yeah, at the same time, I think that Luck and Nelson and they're guys like that have done a better job about kind of coming out a little bit more, showing their
Certainly.
personality.
How much can Luck close the gap on Peyton with winning? Well, like, what would he need to do on the field to be like, hey, Andrew Luck, I like more than Peyton Manning?
I think just definitely win one.
Well, at least one. I think it's got to be at least 2 before you even talk about it for a lot of fans. Part of me says this, though. The expectations in the age that Andrew Luck was drafted in were extreme. Extreme. And if you can live up to them with 2 or 3 Super Bowls, man, that's a lot. I mean, how many busts do we see? That's why, again, and I've said this in last week's podcast, LeBron to achieve what he's achieved, considering all the hype, it's pretty darn impressive.
I agree.
So, I don't know. Rational fans, I think, would maybe give Andrew more of a chance, but too many fans are just, like you said, their name's Peyton, Payton, boy or girl. They don't care.
How do you think Jim Irsay compares the two? I know that he loves Peyton like a son. You've said that many times, but at the same time, he's big on 12.
He loves Andrew. Yeah, I think, like, you might almost love the way Andrew plays the game of football more than Peyton, because he does bring a physical element to
100%.
it, But still, like you said, there's nothing like your first. And Peyton and Jim, I mean, that's just, think about how old Jim was when Peyton was drafted. Still pretty young in his ownership days.
Yeah.
Very young. Hell.
He was in his 30s, wasn't he?
Right. And his dad had just died, I think. Yeah, I still don't think. I mean, again, without Peyton, are the Colts here? Is Lucas Oil Stadium here? I know that sounds absurd, but they're actually somewhat legit questions.
I agree with you, too, about when you used to watch Peyton games, you knew it was like through the motions every week. They're going to get up 21-0.
Robotic.
It was going to be, and part of me is like, you know what? it's a little bit different with luck. You never know what you're really going to get.
Yeah.
Most of the time, it's going to be a win. It's going to be something good, but it's going to be in a different way.
Which is a little nerve-wracking.
Right.
But, yeah, he can impact the game in a little bit different ways. With his legs, again, with his physicality, a little bit different than, I guess, Peyton.
I like it, Lucas. That was
That was
good,
interesting.
good summer question.
Yeah,
for
very
sure.
good June question.
This is from @GoColts17. Have there been any drop balls from Devin Funchess in practices the media has been able to attend?
Yeah, that's a good question. We've seen 3 OTA sessions. I've maybe seen 1 drop. 2 drops would be the far max on that. Like I said, not a lot of targets for Devin Funchess yesterday at all, which was a bit surprising. No Hilton, no Campbell. But yeah, I have not noticed anything too significant in the drop category, to be honest with you.
From Dustin, how many quarterbacks do you see Justin Houston eating this season?
Oh, wow. I do think Justin Houston is more of an eater. Like Von Miller, to me, is like a finesse rusher.
Right, he's just trying to get the strip sack.
Yeah, I think Justin Houston eats.
Yeah.
I've been really impressed the fact that Justin Houston has been out there every day we've been out there and participating. I don't think you see that from a guy that has missed 20-some games over the last 4 years and is the age of 30. Like, right now, I had put it at Justin Houston having the most sacks a Colts player has had since 2013, which I think Walden maybe had 11. So I think Walden had 11 a couple years ago, so I'd say 11 and a half, 12 would be, and that's a high bar. He's got to stay healthy, but I do think that's very possible.
@Cub fan Paul, the Colts are currently number 1 in cap space, $57.5 million, after being number 2 in cap space in 18. One could argue that they, Jim Irsay, wasted a year of Luck's prime in 18, given the obvious holes in cap space available. So here we go again.
Ooh, that's a negative one. We haven't heard many of those.
Yeah, he wants the money to be spent.
I mean, I don't know, I guess more so the additions last year were via draft than free agency. You know, wasting prime, I think that's like a very aggressive term to use and blame it on free agency. Have I thought the Colts could be more active in free agency in past years? Yes, I do. But I don't think it goes I think, honestly, the wasting of the prime is what Chris Ballard had to take over back in 2017.
Good point.
And he looked at it as more so of I want to make sure that there's a better chance long term. You know, Jim Irsay always says, sustained success. I want to be really, really great for a 10-year stretch versus maybe you're exceptionally great once every 3 years. Well, what does exceptionally great get you? You know, does it get you to the AFC title game? Does it get you to the Super Bowl? Does it win you a Super Bowl? And then all of a sudden, are you back to being 8-8, 9-7 for a couple of years? Or do you want to be 11-5, you know, for 9 of the next 10 years, and you hope 2 of those 11-5 turns into Super Bowl wins? So I think that's what you have to decide the route that you want to go. You know, it's always a debate that we're going to have. I don't think Chris Ballard wasted free agency this year. Justin Houston and Devin Funchess were significant. I probably would have played with the Landon Collins idea a little bit more than Ballard, but I see what he's doing. Like, I still like Clayton Gathers for a year. I go trade up for a safety that we're very high on, and then you got to extend guys, and I think that's what he looks at with Sanchez, Costanzo, you know, Ebron, Moore, whoever you want to throw into that group as potential guys. But having said that, and this is a debate for the offseason. We talked about this in the media room yesterday. I think the debates, Joey, for Eric Ebron and Jack Doyle re-signing here next offseason, I can see both sides do it so clear. I think those are great debates. I don't think it's a slam dunk either way. And I think that'll be something that we'll debate throughout the 2019 season.
All right, Joshua wants to know, do you think that too many players with leadership traits and strong personalities could lead to issues in the locker room, like having too many cooks in the kitchen?
Too many strong personalities, yeah, but I don't think the Colts have many strong personalities. Not at all.
There's a difference between leadership and,
Yeah.
and that being a big personality.
Like,
strong
Jabal Sheard
personality.
barely speaks. Justin Houston barely speaks. They're pretty good leaders because they lead by example.
Yeah.
I mean, Andrew Luck isn't the most vocal human being in the world. Anthony Costanzo isn't very vocal. T.Y. Hilton is not very vocal. So
Quentin Nelson.
yeah. So yeah, I would say the Colts. You need some vocalness, and I think the Colts have that. They could probably use maybe a little bit more of that. That's a good question.
Matt asked.
But sorry, Joey.
No, you're right.
Just to double back on that. I don't think there's that many strong personalities. I think strong personalities can get a negative connotation associated with it.
Not the Steelers here, you know?
Yeah.
All right. From Matt, how big is Chunky?
You see they signed Chunky?
I did.
Chunky Clements. What a name.
Is he a fullback? I'm just playing.
Should be, man. I want Chunky to go both ways, right?
Yeah.
You imagine, yeah, I'm Chunky, I play corner. No, you don't.
He brings some soup for everybody.
6'2", 302. Not as chunky as you would like. I want my Chunky to be 340.
Yeah. Talking like Casey Hampton.
Yeah.
Vince Wilfork.
Exactly. Gilbert Brown. That's who I want my Chunky. 6'3", 301 officially for old Chunkster. We'll see if he makes his team.
Joshua Sutton, in your opinion, is the next great Colts wide receiver currently on the roster? If so, who would you bet on?
Ooh, that's a good question. I'm going to say no. I don't know. Deion Kane would be who I would bet on.
Yeah.
And I just say no. It's just hard for me to bet on an ACL after year one. You know, it's just that I have to see more. But yeah, that would be really the only one. You know, I guess can Campbell complete the route? I think there's potential to have some really good receivers. Matt, I consider T.Y. Hilton great. I do. He's put up some great numbers. I just don't see anyone equating to those great numbers Hilton has done on an 8-year stretch. I don't.
Daryl Ingram wants to know how the rookies look so far.
Well, it was disappointing yesterday. You know, we've had 3 OTA sessions, 1 a week, and you go out there yesterday, and there's no Rocky Scene, there's no Paris Campbell.
Throw us a bone here.
That's a little buzzkill. So, like I said, Banogu and Okereke, we saw them get some late first-team action yesterday. I haven't really noticed Kari Willis too much. He's a safety. You don't really notice them a whole lot unless there's, a bunch of deep balls and they're making plays with those balls.
Long night?
Yeah, I'm yawning, man. Who else? Who are the other rookies? Willis, Okereke.
You mentioned Banogu?
Banogu. I feel like I'm missing somebody. Oh, yeah, Marvell Tell. You just notice a frame there.
Yeah.
Notice a size. That
big guy.
Yeah, big guy. EJ Speed got some first-team action a couple weeks ago. Didn't yesterday with Matthew Adams back, but he's got some run with Darius Leonard out. So I don't think I'll go into training camp, Joey, and say any rookie is a 16-game starter. I thought there was a chance with Banogu, but I don't think I'm going to go there just yet.
Stan Cal always bringing some interesting perspective in his questions, I guess. How would you say your profile, yours, Kevin, has changed since joining 1070, both among fans and among local media? It's cool seeing you get play for guests/substitute appearances a lot more now. Do you feel like your footprint in the industry has changed since leaving the Colts?
Wow. Gosh, Stan, that's like something my aunt would ask me or something.
A letter, yeah.
Well, Stan, I would say the creative aspect has certainly improved big time. Just naturally, when you work for a team, you have one hand tied behind your back. Nothing against the Colts. It's what would happen for virtually any professional organization, that there is a PR spin to everything you have to say or write. And as much as I tried to toe the line and be as normal media, if you will, it's just kind of like that leash that gets pulled back in your reins, certainly on a lot of subjects,
How'd the process go? Because here, you're kind of your own editor in a way.
Free as a bird.
Unless you're, hey, Jim Irsay should go F himself. Anything short of something like that. But over there, was it a longer process of...
Certainly.
Yeah.
Certainly. I look at, like, Chad Kelly, suspended for 2 games. You aren't going to find that at Colts.com. It's just kind of like, it's news. Why don't you post the press release?
Yeah.
And, again, nothing against the Colts. I would say this about any other organization that doesn't post suspended player sort of comments. Like, it's just kind of like it's easy. It's simple. It's news. You're informing your fan base, negatively or positively. I think they have a better respect for you if you do that. So I would say within the industry and within fans, I would say they've probably just appreciated, especially when you go, 4-12 like the Colts did the first year. I didn't work for him. You just have a better appreciation of like, all right, he can tell it like it is, good or bad, be very fair, and that has, I think, allowed me to, grow a little bit in terms of doing some co-hosting stuff with our station as well.
We're about an hour 10. You want to do a couple more?
Yeah, let's do 4 more, and then we'll wrap up.
4 more? Okay. Colts Law. How has Quincy Wilson looked in OTAs?
I've noticed him a few times. I mean, he's been your starter in nickel. He gives you that base personnel, and then when you go into dime, he slides inside, and Nate Hairston comes on the field. So I've noticed Quincy Wilson for sure.
Greg, with a full season still to be played, training camp hasn't even started, but Greg wants to know, are there any free agents from next year's class that stand out for the Colts to sign?
I'm sorry, Greg. I just can't. I just cannot go there. I couldn't tell you 3 or 4 free agents outside of the Colts.
Nope.
It's June 5th, Greg. I'm sorry. My brain needs to rest. Ask me it maybe during the bye week.
Like where your head's at, maybe some summertime kind of questions, but just make it a little bit more.
You don't know who's going to get re-signed.
Yeah.
This is re-signing time. Rigoberto goes from being a restricted free agent to the longest Colt tenured on the roster right now in terms of how many years he's under contract.
Sam Sinclair asks, what player do you think will surprise people and improve a lot, and who do you think will fall off and disappoint this season?
Man, Sam, that's a big question. Okay, who do I think is going to make, what do you say, biggest jump?
Yeah, who will improve a lot, and then who do you think will fall off?
I just need to see, what am I going to see from Kamoko Ture? Big prove-it year for him. There's not a crystal clear guy that I think will fall off. Obviously, Ebron's numbers are not going to be the same. And it's like, if Eric Ebron has the same catch percentage and only 5 or 6 touchdowns, that will totally change our opinion of him as a tight end. Like those touchdowns, I think clouded a lot of the consistency he offered you. In terms of taking a big jump, I know Mo Ali Cox is a hot name. I think Al-Qadim Muhammad, Joey. I think he is your third defensive end. I think he can be an effective football player for you. Yeah, those are some of the names that pop into my head.
All right, we'll finish up here with Drew H. Since we didn't win a Super Bowl using the don't sign big free agent strategy, was it really a success? Really? It's obviously not as straightforward as 2 + 2 = 4. Adding a star free agent last year doesn't mean we would have had more success, but it also doesn't mean we wouldn't,
Man, yeah, I guess I do know that. Is this in reference to Gerald McCoy?
I don't really know.
Well, I'm going to turn into a Gerald McCoy thing because I feel like I kind of answered a similar question earlier in the podcast about the whole, are you wasting Luck's prime years, that sort of thing. I will say this about Gerald McCoy, Joey. When I saw the final numbers on him, I was a bit surprised you didn't see more interest from the Colts. Extend past just that early interest.
Mm-hmm.
I think what Chris Bauer thought is this. Justin Houston and the defensive end position is a huge need.
Yep.
He doesn't look at defensive tackle. And honestly, I feel like I've ripped on Kamoko Ture a few times on this podcast. He feels better about Tyquan Lewis and Jihad Ward than he does Kamoko Ture and whatever else you have at defensive end. Like those guys, I think he feels a little bit better about his depth there than he does at defensive end. And so that's why you offered the money to Justin Houston that you did. You needed to get bigger at receiver, so you gave Devin Funchess the sort of money. I just don't think they look at Gerald McCoy at that price tag as a 3-down player when you also could be stunning some growth behind him. So,
all right, man.
Yeah. All right, that wraps up this edition of Kevin's Corner. Again, thank you to Nathan Burton from Georgia Tech for coming on this edition of the Corner. We'll be back next Thursday afternoon, so it'll probably be the latest we've come at you with a podcast in a week here in the off season. But that's what happens when the Colts, have their 3-day mini camp and it extends, into Thursday. So hopefully late Thursday we'll be back, and by the time you listen to this podcast, there will be an Andrew Luck film session breakdown that is just posted on the web. I don't know if you saw this, Joey. He did a little NFL film session with Brian Baldinger and Ron Jaworski.
Oh.
If you have NFL Game Pass, so for the crazies out there that do, they can access it. It's a 19-minute film session of Luck breaking down his own plays from last year.
That sounds awesome.
Yeah, I thought it was really, really good. So I watched it yesterday and posted something on Wednesday morning. It will be up on the site, and check that out if you haven't on 1070thefan.com. He's Joey Molinaro. I'm Kevin Bowen. Everyone have a great weekend, and thank you for listening to Kevin's Corner.